Yet it's a property theft, it's identity theft. Palestine is nothing but a replacement of Israel, and Islam is nothing but a replacement to Judaism. Palestine never existed. It is not occupied, and Palestinians are not indigenous of the land. And they are not fighting for land anyway, because they have been given a land, but they refuse Israel's right to exist. And October 7 is not an outcome of occupation. It's an outcome of the exploitation of infinite forces that have been working for 77 years to sabotage the Jewish state, because it's a very sensitive conflict, especially with the Jewish influence as a successful minority worldwide. So this type of entities, they understand what it means to intervene and manipulate the Middle Eastern conflict, especially the Israeli-Arab conflict. So there is no amount of explanation, there is no amount of books or material that can convince the average person that what's happening in Gaza is an evil practice inspired by a barbaric culture coming from the 7th century that is willing to kidnap infants and is willing to sacrifice as many children as it takes for eternity until the point of annihilation for the sake of revenge.
Let's go into this issue of what you mean when you say that Palestinianism or the Palestinian is a bit of a bogus or artificial identity. There never were a people who were defined as Palestinian. What you have is Arabs from the region who are living in this land, but that doesn't automatically entitle them to their own state. There are lots of people who live in other countries and they can't automatically demand a state. But in this case, you have this group of people that is affirming a kind of national identity. We are Palestinians. Is that what you mean when you say that Palestinianism is a kind of a fiction?
It's a made-up identity, and it's so elusive that could mean anything, because anybody can just put on a keffiyeh and become a Palestinian. You know, Yasser Arafat, the creator of, or let's say the father of the Palestinian revolution, was an Egyptian man. His birth certificate said on it, Egyptian. Hamas leaders from Sinwar to Haniya, their birth certificates said on it, Egyptians. When I was born, my birth certificate said on it, Jordanian. The West Bank belonged to Jordan. It did not belong to something used to be known as Palestine. Palestine was never a sovereign state, and Palestinians are not a nation. It's a political movement. And even when Yasser Arafat was asked once after he declared independence in 1988, he was asked, what is Palestine? What is the border? What are the borders? He said, Palestine is wherever there are Palestinians. So he did not even define the borders. And today we have a new generation of Palestinians worldwide who identify with the victim narrative, mostly self-inflicted trauma, self-inflicted catastrophe that is inspired by violence. And it's in their interest to keep the cycle of violence moving. They don't want to break it because there's so many people and forces who have been exploiting this tragedy. And every time, if it was only between the Arabs and the Jews, the problem would have been solved long time ago, 77 years ago. That was the proposal by the United Nations. Let's divide the land, this part for the Arabs. And by the way, as I told you earlier, it was the better part, the more fertile soil. But the Arabs refused that. The problem was between Israel and Arab countries. There was no Palestine at all. But then the Palestinian identity was born when the PLO was founded in 1964. And shortly after, Yasser Arafat used the keffiyeh, which is an Iraqi symbol coming from Kufa, and it became the symbol of the Palestinians. He took a Jordanian flag and removed the star from it, and it became Palestinian flag. It never existed before, and posed only as a hostile movement to replace Israel, not to build a nation that can thrive and prosper in peace, in peaceful relationship to Israel. So I can go on and on forever about this force. And now it's their struggle. And again, as I said, it's nothing but self-inflicted trauma. self-inflicted catastrophe that they keep just repeating again and again, and Gaza is only the last chapter in their comic book. So when you have a people who don't have regard to their children, and their entire focus is the cause and the continuation of this angry cause, I don't have respect for these people. I don't care what type of identity. Even if they were a legitimate ethnic group, I still have a problem with them. You know, in Israel, the entire nation protect the children. It's a priority. Why Israel was broken on October 7? Because the Jewish people saw Jewish children being kidnapped, infants, and babies being burnt to death, women raped. This is why the country was, there is no way as a nation to coexist with these people. Israel in good faith allowed Yasser Arafat and the other Palestinians to come from outside in good faith, hoping that this would solve the conflict. But when they returned in Oslo some 30 years ago, instead of peace, they turned it into a bloodbath. So Palestinians, they are invaders. We are not Palestinians. When I was born, there was nothing written on my forehead says Palestinian. My ethnicity is Arabic. My language is Arabic. Our culture is Arabic. If we qualify to anything, we qualify as Arabs. But Palestinians, this is something coming from Russia, from China, from the Islamic Republic, from jihadis, from communists, and now by clout seekers in the United States. Anybody can be a Palestinian. And so many people today worldwide identifying as Palestinians. And I don't know what really can satisfy their ambitions, especially when they are in their nature conflicted. If they did not have a common enemy, Israel, they would kill each other. Communists and jihadists totally opposing each other. They can never meet. But when they found in Israel as a common enemy, they work together. Take this common enemy, they would destroy each other. So what is Palestinian? This is one of the biggest questions of our time. And the self-proclaimed Palestinians, apparently, those are the ones who sit in comfort. Those are the ones who sit abroad, expecting from children, not only Gaza children, but also Jewish children, to pay the bills of their greed.
If Hamas were to, let's just say we could somehow just subtract Hamas from Gaza, remove all the Hamas influence from Gaza, isn't it true that Gaza would still be a highly toxic and dysfunctional society even without Hamas?
As I told you earlier, Gaza is a breeding ground. Even if Hamas is removed, tomorrow there will be another radical group. Maybe today they are Islamists or jihadists. Tomorrow we will be dealing with communists who could be a lot more dangerous than jihadists and a lot more sophisticated in their warfare. And we can never end. What's happening in Gaza right now, I think, is really important. An entire society has been hijacked by terrorists, regardless of their ideology. They all agree that the society must fight to death. Their goal is to destroy Israel, not to build a Palestinian state. So what can we do? Just allow such radicals, such terrorists to continue this game? And how much bloodshed would satisfy their ambition? And let's say even if they succeeded in destroying Israel eventually, God forbids, will they stop there? Look what Palestinians did in Jordan. Look what Palestinians did in Lebanon. Wherever they go, and again, Palestinians not as an ethnic group, Palestinian ideologists who basically, and in most cases, are anti-establishment. Palestine does not stand for order. It stands for chaos. And the Palestinians love chaos because this is the only place for them to thrive. I have studied the Palestinian Revolution and I have witnessed the Palestinian Revolution. It's a revolution for the sake of revolution. It's not a revolution for the sake of a statehood. Statehood, this is just a fancy idea. Resistance is a fancy idea, does not even belong to the region. There is no such thing in Arabic as resistance. It's an imported term from the Soviet. So where can they stop? And if I give them Israel, if I give them the land of Israel, the land of Syria, the land of America, do you think this type of mentality would actually run governments? They are incapable of forming a nation. They don't have any quality. They haven't qualified. I'm telling you about a savage society that is actually praise suicide bombers as martyrs and justify and legitimize the sacrifice of children, putting children in harm's way, the very foundation, the very basic of any society. How can I trust these people of being my neighbors? How can I trust these people with anything? And those Western leaders who want to just hand them a state, they think they are going to calm the beast. They are feeding the beast. They are rewarding terrorism, and they will ignite more chaos. You know, Lebanon was a very beautiful Christian country at some point, before the Palestinians were pushed by the Jordanian king out of Jordan for the crimes that they committed in Jordan. The king invited them as guests, and within no time, Yasser Arafat and the Palestinians tried to overthrow the king, and the king did not want to kill them, so he expelled them. Where did they escape? They went to Lebanon. Lebanon was the Riviera of the Middle East, Christian country, full of life, full of culture. Within no time, they turned Lebanon, especially Beirut, to rubble. 15 years of civil war. This is what the Palestinians did in Lebanon. And today, some Westerners are very excited about this new cause that they're just importing. It has the capacity of turning Europe, the United States, into rubble. Not necessarily the same style they are doing here in the Middle East. It's just the victim narrative. It should not spread. The hateful indoctrination, the entitlement for revenge, the entitlement for compensation, especially when it's driven by jihad. Now it becomes by the name of Allah, not only by the name of nationalism. So who are they? And do they have a leadership? And what do they want in their revolution? All we witnessed throughout the revolution, that the revolutionary leaders become very rich, billionaires, and the poor children dwell in despair. And they keep people in ignorance as a breeding ground for their terrorism, because otherwise they are not going to find the human fuel or the human sacrifice necessary for the continuation of their endless cause. This is why I question their identity. And I know them firsthand. I wish they had a legitimate leadership. I wish they had a goal. I wish they had a moral compass. I wish they had at least a middle ground where Israel can meet with them and we can end it just through negotiations. But this is an entire society that is committing suicide, and this has to stop. I think everything affiliated with Palestine and Palestinianism must be studied and discussed freely, away from the tragedy of Gaza. The fact that I question Palestine and Palestinianism does not mean that I am canceling the tragedy and the self-inflicted catastrophe and the amount of bloodshed that happened in Gaza. This is something we need to put it on the side and think rationally. How is this problem originating? As long as we are believing the lie and the lie is spreading like wildfire, they are going to turn the rest of the world into Gaza rubble.
It became apparent in World War II that the Japanese would never surrender unless their whole society was somehow remade. And the same, by the way, with Germany, that the German people's support for Hitler going even into 1944 and 1945, that without pulverizing the enemy, and not only that, what came right after that was called denazification. In other words, making the institutions of German society, new education systems, new political structures, that you could not fix the system from within. It had to be remade from the outside. And that, in fact, is what happened and has been quite successful. Japan is a completely different country. It's been a peaceful country now for 75 years, and it's worked. My question is, we don't think today about that kind of a model, right? Because essentially, by and large, if a war starts today, within 10 minutes, people talk about, let's have a ceasefire. So this is kind of my concluding question to you is this. To fix this, it looks to me, if your diagnosis is correct, the propaganda is already built into the society, the children are indoctrinated, the parents are indoctrinated, it looks to me that something quite dramatic is needed to rebuild that society from the ground up. Do you agree? And what is that something that you would If you were running it, how would you fix it?
Look, first of all, I don't have the capacity to really run such a society. And my suggestion for any force that is involved in this conflict, that Gaza's giant refugee camp was maintained by the United Nations, by all those who have been exploiting the conflict to keep the tragedy going, should have been dismantled 77 years ago. But they kept a first, a second, a third, and a fifth generation of migrants, refugees, to keep the refugee status, not only in Gaza, also in the West Bank, also in Syria, in Jordan, in Lebanon. These people deserve better. They deserve life. The neighboring countries can't take them. This is where they belong. Their identity is Arab. They can fit right in. And today, I don't think Israel can afford keeping this breeding ground close to its borders. I don't think it's fair. Not after October 7. Most people did not see what happened on October 7. I saw it firsthand, and also I'm aware of the culture, and I am with separation because it has been almost a century, and a century can teach you something. If they have been refusing coexistence and they want to continue this fight for 100 years, do you think another 100 years they would come to realize that we have no other choice but to coexist with our neighbors and accept them for their religious and ethnic identity? Or they are going to continue adapt to Islamic ideology that demonizes the Jews, dehumanize them by the name of Palestine, but at the essence, it's an Islamic war that has been going on for 14 centuries. Hamas called their attack after Al-Aqsa Mosque. They said Al-Aqsa flood, even though they control the mosque. And that mosque is built on the top of the Jewish temple. And the state of Israel allows them to worship freely and does not allow the Jewish citizens to actually enter the mosque, not to offend the Muslims. When Israel captured Jerusalem after the 1967 war, the Jewish generals handed the keys to the Muslims in a peaceful gesture to tell them, it's yours. We are not here to conquer your religion. But do you think this made the Muslims retreat or understand the peaceful message? No, they have been blaming, and they say that Al-Aqsa Mosque is under occupation, even though the Jews are not allowed to go in. This is the reality. It's a religious war, but from one side only, not from the Jewish side. It's from the Islamic side. And in Islam, there has been no such thing as Palestine. They don't have even a name that describes this land. They call it Bayt al-Maqdis, which means like the holy site. That's the name that the Quran gave it. They don't have a real definition or a name, Islamic name of the land. Yet, it's a property theft, it's identity theft. Palestine is nothing but a replacement of Israel, and Islam is nothing but a replacement to Judaism. If you take all the things that the Muslims and Islam stole from other cultures, from other religions, Islam would be left with nothing. There is nothing original to it. It would go back to an idol buried in the sand of the Arabian desert. This is what Islam. It's all borrowed, stolen from Christianity, stolen from Judaism, stolen from other religions. And the same thing they're doing in India, stealing property, stealing identity. So the world is not understanding this religious dimension of it. And of course, Palestine is a fancy idea. You know, Hamas does not believe in nationalism at all. The Muslim Brotherhood don't believe in nationalism.
So they know it's a fiction.
They know it's a fiction. They don't praise it, but they know that it's a very powerful tool. You know, my father, who was one of the founders of Hamas, used to say, we don't believe in Palestine, we don't believe in political borders. He believes in Islamic Khilafah that sits on the globe, on earth, with one leadership. That's not the Israeli ambition. Israel was very satisfied with a small piece of their historic land, and they were willing to coexist with the Arabs. But is it only the Arabs, or is it Islam? Is it communism? Is it now the new generation that is now been indoctrinated and radicalized to just hate the Jews, and they don't know why they hate the Jews? They think they are hating the Jews because the Jews killed the children of Gaza, ignoring and denying the responsibility of a society that is reckless when they put children in harm's way. So I don't know how much is going to take to convince such generation. And if they don't want to listen, this is their problem. You know, Israel is a fortress and nobody can penetrate this. It's a very strong nation with the strongest intelligence, with the strongest army, with the strongest economy, totally independent if the world choose to sanction Israel. But can we say the same about Europe? Can we say the same about the United States? And today, so many countries have been betraying Israel, stabbing Israel in the back. What is going to be the outcome and what is the alternative? To sanction the most successful minority with the greatest contribution to life, to civilization, to replace it with what? With those who just want to buy everything. They think everything can be bought by the oil and the gas money. If this is what they want to do, I say just good luck. But for me, this is my birthplace. I recognize the Jewish right in it. It's not a shameful thing. It's not treason. And I am loved here and I love the people here. And if I have no choice but to stay in this land, then I stay in this land for eternity. I don't need to go anywhere else.
I think what you're saying is Israel, far from being the problem, is actually the solution.